So, Bitcoin. It was supposed to be this amazing peer-to-peer digital cash, right? But if you've ever actually used it, you know it can be painfully slow and surprisingly expensive. Well, the Lightning Network promises to fix all of that. We're talking instant, basically free payments built right on top of Bitcoin. But here's the big question we're digging into. Is this the revolution we've been waiting for? Or is it accidentally rebuilding the exact same old financial system it was meant to destroy? All right, let's get into it.
And right away, you can see the difference it's night and day. A normal Bitcoin transaction, you could be waiting up to half an hour for it to go through and paying a few bucks, sometimes more, for the privilege. But the Lightning Network, we're talking less than a second, for a fee so small you basically can't even measure it. This is the whole sales pitch, making Bitcoin actually work for everyday stuff, like grabbing a coffee or sending a quick tip online.
So why do we even need this? Well, the very thing that makes Bitcoin so secure, its design, also makes it really slow. Think of it like a highway, but it only has 1 or 2 lanes. When rush hour hits, everything gets jammed. And if you want to get through faster, you have to pay a much higher toll. That's your transaction fee. Obviously, that just doesn't work if you want a global payment system handling millions of little transactions every single day.
Okay, so to fix that traffic jam, developers built the Lightning Network. You can think of it as a super fast express lane built on top of that main Bitcoin highway. It's what we call a Layer 2 solution. And when you actually look at the data, this isn't just some cool idea on a whiteboard. The numbers are painting this incredibly optimistic picture of a network that is absolutely thriving.
For the longest time, one of the biggest knocks against Lightning was, yeah, but do the payments even go through? People worried they'd fail all the time. But honestly, that's just not what the data shows anymore. If your channels are set up right, you're looking at a success rate of over 99.7%. So what does that mean? It means the network isn't just fast and cheap, it's also incredibly reliable. It just works.
And it's not just for tiny amounts either. The total value zipping across the public network has absolutely exploded, up 266% in just 1 year. This tells you it's not just a bunch of hobbyists sending a few pennies back and forth. No way. This points to some really serious adoption, maybe even some bigger enterprise-level money flowing through.
And for everyday users, the savings are real, and they're happening right now. Just look at the major crypto exchanges that have plugged into Lightning. They're reporting that their users are saving more than 80% on fees when they withdraw their Bitcoin. That is a game changer. It turns what used to be a kind of expensive process into something you can do instantly for almost nothing.
And this growth isn't just happening in one little corner of the world. The actual infrastructure, the nodes that make the network run, it's everywhere. Yeah, you've got strong hubs in North America and Europe, for sure. But look at that huge other slice. It's almost half the network. That tells you there's this massive, widespread, grassroots thing happening all over the planet.
So you put it all together and the data tells a really powerful story, right? You've got these sub-second payments for retail, big exchanges are all in, and even huge companies are starting to use it for stuff like sending money across borders. A whole ecosystem is popping up. It really does start to look less like a cool experiment and more like an actual revolution in how we move money.
It sounds amazing, doesn't it? Faster, cheaper, growing like crazy, case closed. Well, not so fast. A really interesting academic paper just came out that uses economic modeling to look at this, and it suggests there might be a massive flaw baked into the design, a flaw that could lead to a future that looks a lot darker than the one we just talked about.
Now, this whole counter-argument, it's not based on today's user numbers. It's based on a theoretical model that tries to predict how the network will evolve over time based on pure economic incentives. And what it suggests is pretty shocking, that far from making things more decentralized, Lightning might actually be on an unavoidable path straight towards centralization.
And at the absolute center of this whole critique is this idea of rent-seeking hubs. So instead of a wide-open, competitive network where anyone can play, the model predicts that just a few huge players will naturally end up in control. Imagine a toll road operator who doesn't actually build any new roads, but just buys up all the existing ones and then jacks up the prices because they can. That's rent-seek. This chart here does a fantastic job of showing you the economic pressure. See, as more people use Bitcoin, the cost of a transaction on the main network, that yellow line, it just goes through the roof. So that naturally pushes everyone over to the Lightning Network with its flat costs. But here's the twist. To open a new Lightning channel, you still have to pay one of those expensive on-chain fees. So a powerful incentive is created to just connect to a big existing hub instead of building out the network yourself.
And the argument is that over time, the network just naturally morphs from what you see on the left, this beautiful, competitive, decentralized web, into the model on the right, a hub-and-spoke system. It just becomes cheaper, easier, and more reliable to send all your payments through one massive central entity. And of course, that entity then gets a ton of control over fees and the flow of money.
The paper doesn't pull any punches. The author basically argues that Lightning doesn't really solve Bitcoin's scaling problem at all. It just changes it. So instead of a public highway that has traffic jams, you end up with a handful of private toll roads controlled by a few very powerful gatekeepers. And the critique gets even sharper. It starts comparing this new structure to a kind of unregulated shadow banking system. Think about it. The hubs act like banks, but with zero transparency. We have no idea what their reserves are. They can use their control over all the money in the system to dominate everyone else. And on top of that, just figuring out the best path for a payment to take is so complex, it also favors these huge centralized players. The ultimate fear here is that the network starts to drift away from the core security of the Bitcoin blockchain itself. So, where does that leave us? We're stuck with two totally different pictures of the future for the exact same technology. One is this amazing story of decentralized, bottom-up growth, and the other is a really serious warning about an inevitable return to centralization.
And this table really sums up the tension. On the one hand, you have the real-world data. It shows us an instant, cheap, and globally decentralized network with thousands of nodes, all set to become the payment backbone for Bitcoin. But on the other hand, you've got this economic model that predicts that all that efficiency will eventually be captured and controlled by a few powerful hubs, essentially creating a private, rent-seeking shadow bank.
Which brings us right back to our big question. Is the Lightning Network actually delivering on its promise to create a truly decentralized, scalable future for money? Or are the economics behind it quietly forcing it to recreate the same old centralized, middleman-run financial system we already have? The answer, whichever way it goes, is probably going to define the future of Bitcoin for a very, very long time.